Rivian basically kickstarted a whole other company, but let's backpedal a little bit on this one, no pun intended. For a while now, we've seen Rivian applying for patents on e-bikes and more micromobility solutions. Of course, this is not unheard of technology. Could be anything from scooters to e-bikes to motorcycles. And for a while now, we've known they've been cooking up some software and even bringing over some of their supply chain for electronics and batteries from their vehicle production to some more affordable, lightweight, smaller vehicles, of course, for cities and for recreational purposes. But I guess they decided the best move forward with this was to just spin it off and turn it into a brand new company that they're calling Also. So they've launched a website, ridealso.com, as well as a new Instagram account. But through all of the articles I've read about Also so far, it feels like it's not actually Rivian owned. Apparently Rivian will have a minority stake in the company that is still allegedly a pretty large chunk. They haven't told us exactly what percentage of the company will be owned by Rivian. However, I feel like there's going to be a lot of Rivian DNA in this brand because, for one, RJ Scaringe is on the board of directors, so he has a large say, I think, on what the company actually ends up releasing. And through these news reports, they've said that they directly plan on sharing retail space with Rivian, which essentially means that all the different Rivian spaces that have opened up across the country will likely start seeing Also's products inside those same spaces. And so far, the company has about 70 staff already, which is quite large, and they've raised over $100 million through VCs. Quite impressive, if you ask me. I feel like $100 million could probably put together some pretty impressive e-bikes, but it sounds like they want to make like intuitive, elegant, simple, and affordable lightweight electric vehicles for deliveries and for cities, and they plan on unveiling their first hardware later this year and with deliveries starting early next year, which I think might just time the launch of the Also brand with the Rivian R2 perfectly, because obviously there's a lot of people out there who can't afford to buy a Rivian, especially the R1 products, but we should acknowledge even the R2 is going to be somewhat unobtainable for much of the country. And I think what might be cool about the whole micro-mobility thing and the Also brand is it might open up the Rivian spaces, you know, their retail presence, and their more affordable R2 products to people that normally would never enter a Rivian space because they look at it as, you know, a luxury brand or way too expensive for me to consider. But I think there's a lot of people out there who, even though they might be limited to used cars or don't feel quite ready to make the switch to an electric vehicle, they might walk into a Rivian space and be interested in e-bikes, which might only cost $1,000 or a couple $1,000, or maybe it's motorcycles, or maybe it's scooters. We don't know yet. They haven't unveiled anything. All we know from RJ is that apparently it has a seat, 2 wheels, a screen, and a battery. So that could really be anything from an e-bike to a mobility scooter, or it could even be a fully fledged all-electric motorcycle. But those kinds of mass market, more affordable accessories for mobility might be a lot more attractive to a different demographic that normally would not ever think about entering a Rivian location. But maybe when entering it, if they see R2s out on display, they might start thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe I'm not quite ready for what's available now, because it'll likely start out as, you know, tri-motor R2X that's like $70,000, but it'll be on their mind in the future of like, man, I picked up my e-bike from that one Rivian space and they had a really cool vehicle in there. Maybe I'll consider one next year when the single motor standard range comes out. I also loved Chris Hilbert's idea over on Twitter where he posted that Rivian could build in charging accessories to their vehicles so that your e-bikes are basically charging like while they're mounted on your R3 or R2 product. Rivian has talked a lot about doing adventure accessories or camping accessories that are custom fit for the vehicles, which I just feel like is a match made in heaven. I guess the big question for me though that I don't quite understand is why did they want to spin this off into its own separate company that Rivian doesn't even have a majority stake in? Maybe it's because people were complaining that Rivian was wasting too much time on e-bikes and should instead focus way more on achieving profitability with the R2 and R3 vehicles down the line, and perhaps opening it up and spinning it off into its own separate company opened up more equity for VCs to jump in on, and that's how they were able to raise over $100 million. Like, if Rivian themselves just spent $100 million on e-bikes and motorcycles and scooters and that kind of thing, maybe shareholders would be quite upset, because Rivian, of course, is publicly traded inflated, so that investment would show up on the balance sheet and people would go, Rivian, why are you burning all this money on bikes? You should be focused on cars. So that's my best theory as to why they decided to spin this off into its own separate brand, but keeping RJ on the board of directors probably gives them a lot of control over it without having to spend their own money on it. And the next question I have is like, why announce this now? Maybe it's a push from the VCs to be like, hey, we have a lot of money put into this new brand that we're excited to launch next year. But I still feel like this announcement is interesting and somewhat exciting if you're into micromobility, but I feel like it would be way more exciting and way more interesting if they actually had a design or a product to unveil. But who am I to say what the marketing should be done? Maybe the marketing team warned them that, you know, let's just announce the product and the brand and what we stand for first, and then later in 2025 we can have an official unveiling and it will be under the also branding. It will not be a Rivian bike, but there will probably be a lot of Rivian DNA on the inside between the software, the battery. I don't exactly know how much you can really carry over from, you know, a giant $70,000 all-electric truck and then convert that into like e-bike. Maybe there's 2170 cells on the inside or something. I don't know, but needless to say, I'm excited, and I actually love a lot of what the marketing has done with this kind of like dots layout that rearrange into different graphs and different animations. I feel like they could probably come up with a super low-cost display that gives you a lot of information that's really just a bunch of lights, not RGB or anything, just little dots that kind of rearrange themselves, and there's some kind of cool software aesthetic that they're probably cooking up for whatever they have planned. I have a feeling it's some kind of e-bike, but I could be wrong. It could end up being a scooter or an electric motorcycle. But why do you guys think Rivian wanted to spin this off into its own separate brand? Do you think this is too much of a distraction for RJ and Rivian, or do you wish they would have kept it all internal and just had Rivian branded e-bikes? Feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.